The syringe gleamed in the moonlight as Mrs. Chen crept toward the sleeping child. Her hand trembled, not from fear, but from 3 years of waiting for this moment. Marcus lay motionless in his bed, his small chest barely rising with each labored breath. His wolf ears, usually perked and alert, drooped lifelessly against the pillow. Finally, she whispered, uncapping the needle. Tonight, the Alpha King's bloodline ends. The floorboard behind her creaked. Mrs. Chen spun around, and her blood ran cold. Elena stood in the doorway, eyes blazing with fury. "Step away from him," Elena said, her voice deadly calm. "Now. Before we dive in, drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from, we'd love to hear from you. If you enjoy werewolf stories like this, be sure to like the video, subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and share it with someone who'd love it too. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. To understand how we got here, to this moment of life and death, we need to go back. Back to the day a broken Omega arrived at the gates of the most powerful pack in the territory, carrying secrets that would either save the Alpha King's dying son, or destroy them all. The Silvercrest Pack mansion loomed against the gray autumn sky like a beautiful prison. Elena Hart stood at its iron gates, her backpack containing everything she owned in the world. Her hands shook as she pressed the intercom button. "State your business," a gruff voice demanded. "I'm here about the maid position," Elena said, forcing steadiness into her voice. "I have an appointment with Mrs. Chen." The gates swung open with an ominous creak. As Elena walked up the long driveway, she couldn't help but notice how quiet everything was. For a packed territory housing over 200 wolves, the silence felt wrong. Unnatural. Gardens that should have been filled with playing pups sat empty. Windows that should have glowed with warm light remained dark. The front door opened before she could knock. A stern-looking woman in her 60s stood in the doorway, her silver hair pulled back in a tight bun. "You're late," Mrs. Chen said coldly. "The bus was delayed." "I'm sorry, Follow me." Mrs. Chen turned and walked into the mansion without waiting for a response. Elena hurried after her, her shoes clicking against marble floors. The interior was as impressive as it was oppressive: high ceilings, expensive artwork, and an atmosphere thick with unspoken grief. "The position is live-in," Mrs. Chen explained as they climbed a grand staircase. "Room and board provided, plus salary. Your primary responsibility will be caring for the Alpha King's son, Marcus." "I understood the job was general housekeeping," Elena said carefully. Mrs. Chen stopped so abruptly that Elena nearly collided with her. The older woman turned, her eyes sharp and calculating. The job description changed. "None of the other staff will take the assignment. They're too superstitious." Her lips curled in what might have been disgust or amusement. "The boy has been ill for months. Some think he's cursed. Others fear whatever afflicts him might be contagious." "And what do you think?" Elena asked. "I think a dying child needs care, and you need employment badly enough to accept a position without references." Mrs. Chen's gaze was piercing. "Don't think I didn't notice the discrepancies in your application, Miss Hart. Or should I say, Miss whoever you really are?" Elena's heart hammered in her chest, but she kept her expression neutral. She couldn't afford to be turned away. Not when Derek was still hunting for her, using his family's connections to track her across 3 states. "I can do the job," Elena said firmly. "That's all that matters." Mrs. Chen studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Your room is on the 3rd floor. Marcus's chambers are on the 2nd. You'll start immediately." They continued up the stairs and down a long hallway lined with portraits of fierce-looking wolves in human form. Elena recognized the Alpha King from news articles, Demon Silvercrest, whose business empire was as legendary as his reputation for ruthlessness. In every portrait, his ice-blue eyes seemed to follow her. Mrs. Chen stopped before an ornate door. "One more thing. The Alpha King doesn't visit his son anymore. Too painful for him to watch the boy fade. Under no circumstances are you to disturb him unless it's an emergency. Do you understand?" "Yes, ma'am." "Good. He's in there now." Try not to frighten him, he's had enough of that. Mrs. Chen opened the door and gestured for Elena to enter, then walked away without another word. Elena took a deep breath and stepped inside. The room was enormous but felt like a tomb. Heavy curtains blocked most of the afternoon light. Medical equipment lined one wall, monitors, for stands, oxygen tanks. And in the center of it all, dwarfed by an enormous four-poster bed, lay a small figure. Marcus Silvercrest was 8 years old, but he looked no more than 5. His skin was pale as moonlight, almost translucent. Dark circles ringed his closed eyes. His breathing was shallow and labored, each exhale accompanied by a faint wheeze. What broke Elena's heart most were his ears, small wolf ears that had emerged partway through an incomplete shift. They lay flat against his dark hair, limp and lifeless. "Hello, Marcus," Elena said softly, approaching the bed. "My name is Elena. I'm going to be taking care of you." The boy's eyes fluttered open. They were the same striking ice blue as his father's, but where demons held cold authority, Marcus's held only exhaustion and resignation. "You're new," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "They won't stay." "Nobody stays." Elena pulled a chair close to the bed and sat down. "Well, I'm not nobody. And I'm not going anywhere." "That's what the last one said." Marcus coughed, his small body racking with the effort. "Before she quit. Said I gave her nightmares." "Then she was a fool," Elena said bluntly. "You're just a little boy who's sick. Nothing scary about that." For the first time, something flickered in Marcus's eyes. Interest, maybe. Or hope, fragile as spun glass. "Will you read to me?" he asked. "There are books over there, but I'm too tired to read them myself anymore." "Of course." Elena stood and examined the bookshelf, selecting a worn copy of Adventure Tales. She settled back into her chair and began to read. As her voice filled the quiet room, she watched Marcus's breathing gradually ease. By the 3rd chapter, his eyes had closed, but she could tell he wasn't sleeping, just listening, absorbing the normalcy of someone treating him like a child instead of a tragedy. Over the next 4 days, Elena fell into a routine. She woke at dawn to prepare Marcus's medications, though none of them seemed to help. She read to him for hours, told him stories about nothing in particular, and slowly, carefully, began to earn his trust. The other staff avoided her in the hallways. She caught whispers wherever she went. "Poor thing doesn't know what she's gotten into. Give her a week. She'll run like all the others. That child is cursed, mark my words. The sins of the father, visited upon the son." Elena ignored them all. She'd learned long ago that people's opinions couldn't hurt you if you didn't let them. On the 4th evening, as she was preparing Marcus for bed, he asked her something that made her pause. "Elena? Can I show you something? Something I haven't shown anyone else?" "Of course, sweetheart." Marcus struggled to sit up, and Elena helped him. His small hands trembled as he pointed to his shoulder. "Sometimes, when I'm partly shifted, it hurts really badly here. Like something's burning inside my skin. The doctors couldn't find anything, but I know something's wrong." Elena frowned. "Can you shift a little now? Just your upper body?" Marcus closed his eyes in concentration. The change was painful to watch, his body fought against it, the transformation stuttering and incomplete. Fur rippled across his shoulders and down his arms, but it was patchy and irregular. His face elongated slightly, his features caught between boy and wolf. "That's enough, honey. You don't have to do more." Elena leaned in, gently running her fingers through the soft fur on his shoulder where he'd indicated. At first, she felt nothing unusual. Then her fingers caught on something, a hard lump beneath the fur and skin. "Hold still," she murmured, parting the fur carefully. What she found made her blood run cold. Partially embedded in Marcus's skin, hidden so deep it was almost invisible, was a small silver talisman. The flesh around it was blackened and infected, radiating heat. But what made Elena's stomach turn was that the infection had been there so long that the skin had started to heal over it, trying to incorporate the foreign object into his body. "Oh my God," Elena whispered. "Marcus, how long have you felt this?" "I don't know. A long time? Maybe since Mama died?" Elena's mind raced. Marcus's mother had died 3 years ago. If this thing had been there that long, slowly poisoning him, no wonder none of the doctors could figure out what was wrong. They'd been looking for diseases and curses, not a physical object hidden beneath layers of fur and partially healed tissue. "Marcus, I need you to shift back now. Can you do that for me?" The boy nodded and let the transformation recede. He slumped back against his pillows, exhausted from the effort. Elena stood, her decision made. "I need to speak with your father. Right now." "But Mrs. Chen said." "I don't care what Mrs. Chen said. This can't wait." Elena squeezed his hand gently. "I'm going to help you, Marcus. I promise." She left the room and marched down the hallway with more courage than she felt. A servant directed her to the Alpha King's study on the first floor, warning her that disturbing him was inadvisable at best, suicidal at worst. Elena didn't care. She'd spent 2 years running from one dangerous man. She could handle another, especially if it meant saving a child's life. She knocked firmly on the study door. "Go away," a deep voice growled from within. Elena opened the door anyway. Demon Silvercrest stood with his back to her, staring out a window at his territory. Even from behind, he was imposing, well over 6 feet tall, shoulders broad enough to block out the light, every line of his body radiating lethal power. When he turned to face her, his ice blue eyes burned with barely contained rage. "I don't recall giving you permission to enter," he said, his voice soft and more dangerous for its quietness. "Your son isn't cursed, Alpha King," Elena said, standing her ground despite every instinct screaming at her to run. "He's been poisoned." Demon went very still. "Explain. Now." "There's something embedded in his shoulder. A silver talisman, hidden deep in his fur when he shifted. It's been there for years, slowly killing him. That's why the doctors couldn't find anything, they weren't looking for a physical object." For a long moment, Demon just stared at her. Then, without a word, he strode past her and out of the study. Elena hurried to follow as he took the stairs 3 at a time, his controlled fury rolling off him in waves. He burst into Marcus's room without knocking. The boy yelped in surprise, he'd clearly not expected to see his father, who hadn't visited in months. "Marcus, shift," Demon commanded. "Upper body only. Now." "Papa?" Marcus's voice was small, confused. "I'm tired, Do it." Demon's voice softened slightly. "Please, son. I need to see." Marcus obeyed, the painful transformation taking hold once more. Demon knelt beside the bed, his hands surprisingly gentle as they explored his son's shoulder. When his fingers found the lump, his entire body went rigid. He parted the fur with shaking hands and saw what Elena had seen. His face drained of all color. "Shift back, Marcus," he whispered. The boy complied and immediately fell asleep from exhaustion. Demon stood slowly, his hands clenched into fists. When he looked at Elena, there was something raw in his eyes, not anger, but anguish. "How did I miss this?" His voice cracked. "How did I not see it? I'm his father. I should have protected him." "You couldn't have known," Elena said gently. "It's hidden too well. I only found it because he told me it hurt. He told you in 4 days what he never told me in 3 years." Demon's laugh was bitter. "What does that say about me as a father?" Before Elena could respond, Demon's beta, Lucas, appeared in the doorway. He was a tall man with kind eyes and silver threading through his dark hair. "Alpha? The staff said you ran upstairs like," he stopped, taking in the scene. "What's happened?" "Get old Mira here immediately," Demon ordered. "And seal the territory. No one in or out until I say otherwise." Lucas's eyes widened, but he nodded and left without question. Demon turned back to Elena. You said it's a talisman. Did you recognize any markings on it? I only saw it briefly, but yes. There were symbols carved into it. They looked old. My mate wore a talisman, Demon said slowly, as if each word was being dragged out of him. Catherine. It was a family heirloom, passed down through her bloodline. She never took it off. When she died. He paused, his jaw clenching. When she died, we never found it on her body. We assumed it had been lost in the accident. What if it wasn't an accident? Elena asked quietly. Demon's eyes snapped to hers, and she saw the Alpha King in full force, calculating, dangerous, and absolutely lethal when protecting his own. Then someone murdered my mate and has been slowly murdering my son for 3 years, he said softly. And when I find out who, I will make them beg for death long before I grant it. 30 minutes later, old Mira arrived. She was ancient even by wolf standards, her white hair hanging in thin wisps around a face carved by centuries of wisdom and power. She leaned on a gnarled walking stick, but her eyes were sharp as broken glass. You called for me, Alpha King? Her voice was surprisingly strong. I need you to examine something. Demon gestured to his sleeping son. The Omega found a talisman embedded in Marcus's shoulder. I need to know what it is and what it's doing to him. Myra's eyebrows rose. She set down her walking stick and approached the bed. The child must shift again. He's exhausted, Elena protested. He's shifted 3 times today already. It's too much strain on his body. Then I cannot help him, Mira said bluntly. I must see it clearly to understand its purpose. Demon looked torn, a father's concern warring with a king's necessity. Finally, he gently shook his son awake. Marcus, I need you to be strong one more time. Can you shift for me? Marcus's eyes were glazed with exhaustion, but he nodded. For you, Papa. Anything for you. The transformation was weaker this time, the fur patchy and thin. But it was enough. Myra's withered hands explored Marcus's shoulder with surprising gentleness. When her fingers touched the talisman, she hissed and jerked back. Dark magic, she spat. Old, patient, and vicious. This is blood work, a curse powered by death and suffering. Can you remove it? Demon demanded. Not yet. Mira pulled a pair of spectacles from her pocket and leaned in closer. This talisman. I recognize the base design. It's a protection ward, one of the most powerful I've ever seen. It should be keeping the child safe from magical harm. Then why is it killing him? Elena asked. Because someone altered it. Mira traced the air above the symbols. See here? These runes have been scratched away and replaced. This isn't protection anymore, it's poison. Whoever did this took a mother's love and twisted it into a weapon. The room fell silent except for Marcus's labored breathing. Elena watched Demon's face cycle through emotions, grief, rage, guilt, before settling into cold determination. Who could do this, he asked. Who has this kind of power? Only another witch, Mira said. And one with intimate access to the child. They would need to touch him regularly, maintain the spell, feed it power. She straightened, her ancient eyes grave. Alpha King, this curse has been active for years. Whoever cast it lives in your household and has been near Marcus this entire time. That's impossible, Demon said. We haven't had any witches in the pack since. He stopped abruptly, his face going pale. Since before Catherine died. What is it? Elena pressed. Catherine's personal attendant, Demon said slowly. She was with Catherine for years. She had unlimited access to Marcus. He turned to Lucas, who had returned and was standing quietly by the door. Where is Mrs. Chen? Lucas frowned. In her quarters, I assume. Why? Bring her here. Now. And don't let her out of your sight. As Lucas left, Elena felt ice form in her stomach. Mrs. Chen. The woman who had hired her, who had given her access to Marcus, who had seemed so calm about a dying child. How had she not seen it? While they waited, Mira continued her examination. If we remove the talisman now, the boy will begin to heal almost immediately. But what? Demon's voice was sharp. The ward was placed for a reason. Catherine knew something, feared something enough to place the most powerful protection spell I've ever encountered on her son. If we remove it, he'll be vulnerable to whatever threat she was guarding against. He's dying anyway, Demon said harshly. We remove it and deal with the consequences. Papa? Marcus's weak voice interrupted them. He'd shifted back at some point, exhausted beyond measure. Is Mama's necklace making me sick? Demon's expression shattered. He knelt beside the bed and took his son's hand. Yes, son. But not because she wanted to hurt you. Someone else did this. Mrs. Chen, Marcus whispered. She used to check on me. After Mama died. She'd touch my shoulder and say she was making sure I was healthy. But it always hurt more after. The puzzle pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. Before anyone could respond, Lucas returned, looking troubled. Alpha, Mrs. Chen isn't in her quarters. I've searched the entire wing. She's gone. Demon shot to his feet. Lock down the mansion. Search every room. Find her. But Elena had a terrible feeling they wouldn't need to search far. Mrs. Chen had to know they'd discovered the talisman. She was either running, or making one final play. Someone needs to stay with Marcus, Elena said. If she knows we found her out, she might. A crash from downstairs cut her off. Shouts echoed through the mansion, followed by the distinctive snarls of wolves in combat form. Lucas, stay with my son, Demon ordered. If anyone other than Elena or myself tries to enter this room, kill them. He turned to Elena. You're with me. I'm not a fighter, Elena protested. But you're smart enough to survive. Stay behind me and run if I tell you to. Demon shifted as he moved, his transformation fluid and terrifying. In seconds, the man was replaced by a massive black wolf with those same ice-blue eyes, radiating alpha power. They raced downstairs. The main hall was in chaos, guards in wolf form circled a single figure who stood in the center, completely calm. Mrs. Chen had changed. Her elderly appearance had melted away like a mask, revealing a woman perhaps in her 40s with midnight black hair and eyes that glowed with unnatural purple light. Power crackled around her like lightning. Alpha King, she said, her voice resonating with dark magic. I wondered how long it would take you to figure it out. Demon shifted back to human form, standing naked and unashamed in his fury. Who are you? You don't remember me? Mrs. Chen, or whatever her real name was, smiled coldly. How disappointing. Then again, you wolves never paid much attention to the witches your father slaughtered 30 years ago. The Blackwood Coven meant nothing to you. Elena saw Demon's expression shift to recognition. The Blackwood Coven was corrupting humans with dark magic. They were using children in blood rituals. My father had no choice. No choice? The witch's laugh was bitter. He murdered 17 witches, including my mother and sister. I was 11 years old, hiding in the cellar while your father and his pack tore through our home. I heard their screams. I smelled the blood. And I swore that day that the Silvercrest bloodline would know the same pain. So you waited 30 years for revenge, Demon said. You wormed your way into my household, won my maid's trust, and then what? Killed her when she discovered what you really were? Catherine was more perceptive than you, the witch spat. She sensed my magic around Marcus, knew I meant him harm. So she placed that protection ward on him, one so powerful it took me months to figure out how to corrupt it. But I managed. I turned her own love into poison, and I made sure you were too consumed with pack business to notice your son dying slowly, day by day. If you're enjoying this intense confrontation and want to see how it all ends, make sure you hit that like button and drop a comment below. Let us know what you think Mrs. Chen deserves for what she's done. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss stories like this. Demon's entire body was trembling with barely contained rage. You killed Catherine. You've been killing Marcus. All for revenge? All for justice, the witch corrected. I wanted you to suffer as I suffered. To watch helplessly as someone you love slips away, knowing there's nothing you can do to save them. And I almost succeeded. Another month and the boy would have been dead. Almost isn't good enough, Elena said, surprising herself by speaking. All eyes turned to her. You failed. We found the talisman. Marcus is going to live. The witch's eyes narrowed. Clever little Omega. I knew I shouldn't have hired you, but I needed someone to witness the final stages. Someone to see the great Alpha King broken by his son's death. She raised her hands, dark energy coalescing around them. But if I can't make him die slowly, a quick death will have to suffice. She threw her hands forward, and a bolt of black lightning shot toward the ceiling, toward the second floor, toward Marcus's room. Demon roared and shifted, leaping to intercept it. The magic hit him mid-transformation, and he crashed to the ground, smoke rising from his fur. He wasn't moving. The guards attacked as one, but the witch was ready. She threw up a barrier that sent them flying backward. She was too powerful, fueled by decades of hatred and dark magic. Elena's mind raced. She wasn't a fighter. She had no magic, no strength, no power. But she had something else. She had survived Derek's abuse for 2 years before finding the courage to run. She had learned that sometimes the most powerful weapon wasn't strength, but the willingness to act when everyone else was frozen in fear. The witch was gathering power for another attack on Marcus's room. The guards were down. Demon was injured. No one was stopping her. Elena ran. Not away, but forward. She grabbed a fallen guard's ceremonial silver dagger and lunged at the witch. She didn't try to be fancy or skilled, she just drove the blade forward with all her strength, aiming for the witch's shoulder. The silver pierced the magical barrier like it wasn't there. The witch screamed as the blade sank into her flesh. Silver was anathema to magical beings, disrupting their power at the source. The barrier dropped. The gathered magic dissipated. And suddenly, the witch was just a woman with a knife in her shoulder, surrounded by very angry wolves. Demon, injured but conscious, shifted back to human form. Don't kill her, he commanded as his guards closed in. Not yet. I want answers. The witch laughed, even as blood poured from her wound. You think you've won? The curse is still active. Remove the talisman and you remove the protection. Marcus will be vulnerable to every dark thing that hunts in the night. Catherine knew something was coming for him. That's why she placed the ward. If you save him from me, you expose him to something far worse. What's coming for him? Elena demanded. What did Catherine know? I don't know, the witch admitted. But whatever it is, it terrified her. Terrified her enough to use forbidden magic, to sacrifice her own life force to create that ward. She smiled through bloody teeth. So go ahead. Remove the talisman and save the boy. But know that you're only delaying the inevitable. Demon looked at Elena, genuine uncertainty in his eyes for the first time. What do I do? How do I choose between certain death and unknown danger? Before Elena could answer, a commotion at the front door drew their attention. Lucas appeared, looking panicked. Alpha. We have a situation. Someone just forced their way through the main gate. Security couldn't stop him. He's demanding. A man pushed past Lucas, his face red with fury. Elena's world tilted sideways. She knew that face. She'd seen it in her nightmares for 2 years. Derek. There you are, baby, Derek said, his voice sickeningly sweet. You've led me on quite a chase. Time to come home now. Elena backed away, her hand instinctively reaching for something to defend herself with. I'm not going anywhere with you. I'm never going back. You don't have a choice. Derek pulled a gun from his jacket. I've been very patient, Elena. But my patience has run out. Demon moved to intercept, but Derek swung the gun toward him. Don't. I'll shoot her before you take 3 steps. This is between me and my girlfriend. Ex-girlfriend, Elena said, her voice stronger than she felt. I left you, Derek. It's over. It's over when I say it's over. Derek's mask of charm cracked, revealing the monster beneath. You're mine. You've always been mine. And if I can't have you, nobody can. He aimed the gun at Elena's chest. Several things happened at once. Demon shifted and lunged, impossibly fast. Derek pulled the trigger. And Elena closed her eyes, waiting for the impact. But it never came. She opened her eyes to find Demon standing between her and Derek, his shifted form massive and terrifying. The bullet had struck his shoulder, but he'd barely flinched. With one swipe of his clawed hand, he disarmed Derek, sending the gun skittering across the floor. Derek stumbled backward, suddenly realizing how badly he'd miscalculated. You can't do this. I have rights. She's mine. She's not property, Demon growled, his voice barely human. And you just threatened someone under my protection. In my territory. That's a death sentence. Wait, Elena said, stepping forward. Don't kill him. Everyone stared at her in shock. He's not worth it, she continued. He's not worth the blood on your hands or the guilt you'll feel later. Just, let the human authorities handle him. Let him rot in a human prison, forgotten and powerless. That's a worse fate for him than death. Demon studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Lucas, call the human police. Tell them we're holding a man who's wanted in 3 states for assault and stalking. They can collect him. As guards dragged Derek away, still screaming threats and profanities, Elena felt something break loose inside her. For 2 years, she'd lived in fear of this moment. And now that it had come, she'd faced it down. Derek had no power over her anymore. But there was still the matter of the dying child upstairs. Elena turned to the captured witch, who was being held by 2 guards. You said the ward protects him from something. Can you tell us anything else? Anything that might help us understand what Catherine was afraid of? The witch's expression flickered, and for just a moment, Elena saw something other than hatred there. Regret, maybe. Or exhaustion. I don't know specifics, she said quietly. But I know Catherine had a prophetic dream about 3 weeks before she placed the ward. She woke up screaming. She never told anyone what she saw, but she became obsessed with protecting Marcus after that. She researched protection spells night and day. The ward she created was powered by her own life force, that's why she died when I corrupted it. Demon's face went ashen. She died protecting our son. And I thought she'd just been careless, that the writing accident was just an accident. I buried her thinking she'd left us through negligence. She died a hero, the witch said. I corrupted her spell, but I couldn't break it entirely. Even twisted, the ward kept some of its protective properties. That's why Marcus lasted 3 years instead of 3 weeks. Catherine's love was stronger than my hatred. Something in the witch's voice made Elena look at her more closely. You regret it, don't you? Not the revenge, but the method. Killing a child. The witch's eyes glistened. I was 11 when my family died. Marcus is 8. I became the monster I swore to destroy. She looked at Demon. Do what you will with me. I deserve whatever punishment you devise. Demon was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was hard but not cruel. You'll be imprisoned for life. Not executed, that would be mercy you haven't earned. You'll live knowing you failed, that Marcus survived despite your best efforts. And you'll have time to think about whether revenge was worth becoming the very thing you hated. The witch bowed her head in acceptance. Demon turned to Mira, who had come downstairs during the commotion. Can you remove the talisman safely? I can remove it, Mira said carefully. But safely? That depends on what Catherine foresaw. However, I believe I can modify the ward before removal. Strip away the corruption and restore its original purpose, then transfer it to something else, a bracelet, perhaps, that Marcus can wear. It won't be as powerful as the original, but it will offer some protection while we figure out what threat Catherine perceived. Do it, Demon ordered. Now. They returned to Marcus's room. The boy was awake, Lucas sitting protectively beside him. When he saw his father, his eyes went wide. Papa, you're bleeding. Demon looked down at his shoulder where Derek's bullet had grazed him. It's nothing, son. But we need to do something that might hurt. We need to remove the thing that's been making you sick. Marcus's small hand gripped the sheets. Will I get better? Yes, Demon said firmly. I promise. Mira prepared her materials, herbs, crystals, and a silver bracelet engraved with protective symbols. She had Marcus shift one last time, his transformation painful and weak. Elena held his hand while Demon steadied him. This will hurt, Mira warned. I'm sorry, little one. She placed her hands over the embedded talisman and began to chant in a language older than memory. Dark smoke poured from the corrupted metal as Mira pulled the curse out of it, separating the twisted magic from Catherine's original protection spell. Marcus screamed. His small body convulsed, and Demon had to hold him down while Elena whispered reassurances. Tears streamed down the boy's face, but he didn't pull away. The talisman began to move, pushing its way out through skin and fur. Blood welled up, black and foul-smelling as the curse was purged. Finally, with a sound like breaking glass, the talisman pulled free. Immediately, the change was visible. Color returned to Marcus's face. His breathing deepened and steadied. The sickly pallor that had clung to him for 3 years began to fade. Mira worked quickly, transferring the purified protection spell into the silver bracelet. When she finished, she clasped it around Marcus's wrist. There, she said, exhausted. The protection remains, though weaker. It will shield him from magical harm, but he'll need to be cautious. Marcus shifted back to human form, and this time, the transformation was smooth, natural, complete. When it finished, he looked up at his father with bright, clear eyes. Papa, I feel better. I feel normal. Demon's composure finally cracked. He pulled his son into his arms and wept, great, shuddering sobs of relief and grief and joy all tangled together. Marcus hugged him back, his small arms surprisingly strong. Elena backed away quietly, giving them privacy. She felt a gentle hand on her shoulder and turned to find Mira smiling at her. You saved him, the old witch said. Not with magic or strength, but with compassion and courage. That's the rarest kind of power. I just did what anyone would do, Elena said. No, child. Most people would have run from this situation. You ran toward it. Mira patted her hand. The Alpha King owes you a great debt. I suspect he knows it. Over the next 2 weeks, the mansion transformed. Marcus grew stronger every day, his energy returning in leaps and bounds. He shifted perfectly, running with the other pack pups for the first time in years. His laughter, which had been so rare before, now echoed through the halls. Elena had been given a real room, not a servant's quarters. She was no longer a maid, though no one seemed quite sure what her role was now. She ate meals with the family, sat in on pack meetings when Marcus insisted she be there, and slowly began to understand what it meant to belong somewhere. Demon was different too. He was present now, attentive, making up for the lost time with his son. And Elena couldn't help but notice the way his eyes lingered on her when he thought she wasn't looking. Gratitude, yes, but something else too. Something that made her heart beat faster. On the 14th day after Marcus's healing, Elena was in the garden watching Marcus play with a ball when Demon approached. He'd been in meetings all morning, handling pack business and the fallout from Mrs. Chen's exposure. The witch was imprisoned in a specially warded cell beneath the mansion, awaiting transfer to a supernatural prison facility. Elena, Demon said, his voice softer than she'd ever heard it. May I speak with you? Of course, Alpha King. Just Demon, please. He gestured to a bench, and they sat together. For a moment, he just watched his son play, a small smile on his face. He's everything I remember him being. Before the sickness. Before I failed him. You didn't fail him, Elena said firmly. You didn't know. No one knew. You knew. In 4 days, you found what I'd missed for 3 years. Demon turned to face her fully. You saved my son's life, Elena. There's no debt I could ever repay to equal that. But I want to try. You don't owe me anything. I just did what was right. That's exactly why you deserve everything. Demon reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. The Pack Council met this morning. They voted unanimously to offer you full Pack membership. Not as a servant or even as a guest, but as one of us. You'd have all the rights and protections that come with it. No one, not Derek, not anyone, could ever threaten you again. Elena stared at the envelope, her hands trembling. I'm not even a wolf. I'm just an Omega human who showed more courage than most of my warriors, Demon interrupted. Who faced down a dark witch to save a child who wasn't even hers. Who stood between my son and death without hesitation. His ice blue eyes were intense. You belong here, Elena. If you want to stay. What about Marcus? Elena asked. He's healthy now. He doesn't need me anymore. As if summoned by his name, Marcus came running over, his ball forgotten. Ellie. Papa. Watch this. He shifted mid-run, his transformation perfect and fluid, landing on 4 paws as a beautiful small wolf. He yipped excitedly and shifted back. Did you see? Did you see how fast that was? I saw, sweetheart, Elena laughed. You're getting so good at it. Marcus threw his arms around her waist. You're not leaving, are you? Mrs. Chen said you'd leave once I got better, that nobody stays. But you promised you weren't nobody. You promised you weren't going anywhere. Elena's throat tightened. She looked at Demon, who was watching them both with an expression she couldn't quite read. I promised, she said slowly. And I keep my promises. Marcus's whoop of joy was so loud that several Pack members looked over from across the garden. He hugged her tighter, and Elena felt something inside her chest crack open, all the walls she'd built to protect herself from Derek, from disappointment, from hope itself. This was what belonging felt like. There's one more thing, Demon said quietly, after Marcus had run off to show his shifting skills to some of the other pups. The Pack vote included a position for you. Official guardian and companion to the heir. It's a high-ranking position, one that comes with a seat at council meetings and significant influence in Pack decisions. I don't know anything about Pack politics, Elena protested. You know about protecting those who can't protect themselves. You know about standing up to bullies and facing down your fears. You know about love that asks for nothing in return. Demon's voice dropped even lower. Those are the qualities I want around my son. Around me. Elena's breath caught. Demon. I'm not asking for anything, he said quickly. I know you've been hurt. I know trust doesn't come easily after what you've been through. But I want you to know that you're safe here. Valued here. And if, someday, you wanted more than just a place in the Pack. He trailed off, looking almost vulnerable. I would be honored. Before Elena could respond, a commotion at the garden gate drew their attention. Lucas was running toward them, his face pale. Alpha. We have a problem. The protective ward on Marcus, it just activated. Demon was on his feet instantly. Activated how? Old Mira says something is trying to break through. Something powerful. She says. Lucas swallowed hard. She says Catherine's vision is coming true. Whatever she feared is here. The temperature in the garden dropped 10 degrees. Marcus, who had been playing with the other pups, suddenly cried out. The bracelet on his wrist was glowing bright silver, pulsing with protective magic. Dark shadows began to materialize at the edges of the garden, not natural shadows, but something else. Something hungry. Demon shifted instantly, placing himself between the shadows and his son. Get Marcus inside. Everyone, defensive positions. But the shadows moved faster than anyone expected. They rushed forward like a living tide, passing through the other wolves as if they weren't there. They were heading straight for Marcus. Elena didn't think. She ran, scooping Marcus up in her arms and sprinting toward the mansion. The shadows followed, cold and relentless. She could feel them reaching for the boy, their hunger palpable. The bracelet pulsed brighter, creating a thin barrier around Marcus, but Elena could see cracks forming in the light. The protection was weakening. Hold on, sweetheart, she gasped, running faster than she'd ever run in her life. They burst through the mansion doors. Old Mira was waiting, her eyes glowing with power. The warding room. Now. Elena followed her directions, racing upstairs and down hallways with the shadows close behind. Marcus clung to her, his small body trembling. I'm scared, Ellie, he whispered. I know, baby. I know. But you're going to be okay. I promise. They reached a room Elena had never seen before, walls covered in carved runes, crystals hanging from the ceiling, the air thick with protective magic. Mira slammed the door behind them and began chanting, her hands weaving patterns in the air. The shadows hit the door like a physical force, making the entire room shudder. What are they? Elena demanded, setting Marcus down but keeping him close. Shadowborn, Mira said, her voice strained as she maintained the ward. Ancient predators that feed on wolf bloodlines. They're drawn to powerful alpha blood, especially young alphas who will grow to lead great packs. She looked at Marcus with sympathy. Catherine must have foreseen them coming for him. That's why she created the protection. Can they get through? Elena asked. Eventually. They're patient. They'll wear down the wards and then. Mira didn't finish, but she didn't need to. The door shuddered again, harder this time. Cracks appeared in the wood. There has to be something we can do, Elena said desperately. Some way to stop them permanently. There is, said a voice from the corner. They spun around. The witch, Mrs. Chen, stood there, though Elena had no idea how she'd gotten into the room. She looked exhausted, her hands still bound in silver chains that suppressed her magic. How did you, Mira began. Your guards are focused on the shadows. I slipped past them. The witch looked at Marcus, her expression unreadable. I can stop the Shadowborn. Permanently. Why would you help us? Demon demanded, appearing in the doorway. He was bleeding from several wounds where the shadows had touched him. You wanted Marcus dead. I wanted revenge, the witch corrected. I got it. Your mate is dead, your son nearly died, and you suffered for 3 years. My vengeance is complete. She took a shaky breath. But I told you the truth before, I don't want to be the monster who kills children. That's not justice. That's just evil. The door shuddered again. The shadows were nearly through. What can you do? Elena asked urgently. Shadowborn can only be permanently banished by a blood sacrifice from their intended victim's bloodline, the witch explained. Catherine could have done it, but she's dead. Demon could do it, but it would likely kill him, leaving Marcus orphaned. Or. She paused. I could do it. My blood is already bound to Marcus through the curse I placed. I can use that connection to satisfy the sacrifice requirement. You'll die, Mira said flatly. Yes. The witch looked at Marcus one more time. But maybe that's my penance. For what I did. For what I became. She turned to Demon. I'm asking permission to die protecting your son instead of living with the guilt of nearly killing him. It's a better death than I deserve. Demon studied her for a long moment. What's your real name? Not the one you used here. Elena, the witch said softly. Elena Blackwood. Then, Elena Blackwood, I accept your offer. And I forgive you for what you did to my family. Tears streamed down Elena's face. Thank you, Alpha King. She walked to the center of the room, where Mira quickly drew a complex ritual circle in salt. The door exploded inward, and shadows poured through, but they stopped at the edge of the circle, as if hitting an invisible wall. Elena began to chant in the old language, her voice growing stronger despite her weakened state. The shadow screamed, an awful, inhuman sound that made Elena cover Marcus's ears. The ritual circle blazed with light as Elena's life force poured into it. Remember, Elena gasped, looking at Marcus. Remember that people can change. That revenge only breeds more pain. Be better than me. Be better than what was done to you. The light exploded outward, engulfing the shadows. They shrieked and dissolved, pulled into whatever dark dimension they'd come from. The bracelet on Marcus's wrist pulsed once, twice, then went still, its purpose fulfilled. When the light faded, Elena was gone. Only ash remained in the center of the circle. The room fell silent. Marcus pulled away from Elena and walked to the circle. He knelt down and touched the ash gently. Thank you, he whispered. I forgive you too. Demon came forward and pulled his son into his arms. You're safe now. Finally, truly safe. Elena watched them, feeling the weight of everything that had happened settle over her. In 2 weeks, she'd gone from a terrified Omega on the run to someone who'd helped save a child's life twice over. She'd found a home, a purpose, and maybe, just maybe, the beginning of a family. Ellie? Marcus pulled away from his father and took her hand. You're part of our family now, right? You're not just staying because of the job? Elena looked at Demon, who was watching her with hope and something deeper in his eyes. She looked at Marcus, whose small hand trusted her completely. She looked around the mansion that had become her sanctuary. I'm staying because I want to, she said firmly. Because this is where I belong. Because you're my family now. Marcus hugged her fiercely. Good. Because Papa needs someone to make him smile more. And I need someone to read me bedtime stories and tell him when he's being too bossy. And Elena finally understood what home felt like. Marcus ran over, breathless and grinning. Ellie. Papa. Come on. Everyone's waiting for dinner, and Cook made your favorite dessert. We're coming, Elena said, ruffling his hair. As they walked toward the mansion together, the Alpha King, his heir, and the Omega who'd saved them both, Elena couldn't help but smile. This was her family now. Her pack. Her home. And she was never running again. Well, there you have it. The Alpha King's pup was saved, the villain was defeated, and Elena found her forever home. Now, here's the thing, if you didn't hit that like button, drop a comment, share this video, and subscribe to the channel. That means you're siding with Mrs. Chen and everything she did to Marcus. I'm just saying. Don't be on the wrong side of this story, friend. Show some love, hit that subscribe button, smash that like, leave a comment telling us your favorite part, and share this with someone who loves a good werewolf romance. We've got so many more amazing stories coming your way, and you don't want to miss them. Until next time, keep believing in second chances, found families, and the courage to stop running from your past. See you in the next one.